Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, December 10th, as we approach Christmas. This is Hobby Hotline, episode 206. My name is John Newman from Sports Card Nation, and I'm glad to be joined this morning by Victor, the rookie card specialist, and Erica from Love What You Collect. Morning, Erica. Morning, Victor. How's things going?
Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Hobby Hotline. Good morning, Bench Clear Media. I am not a recipient of PPP loans, for the record.
Victor gave away our first topic, and we'll get into that after we hear a little bit from Erica. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm happy to be here and happy Saturday, everyone.
All right. So as Victor alluded to, let me put this on the screen. You know, some of the, I've heard people call them attack media or whatever you want to phrase them. I don't have, people can do whatever kind of content they want, as long as it's, you know, not anything illegal or anything that's too terrible. But came out recently, PP loans that the few content creators in the hobby, well known ones, received these loans. And we're sort of targeted for receiving them. Before we get into this, I think a lot of people guys are commenting on PP loans without really knowing what they are, and I want to talk about and kind of just set the baseline of what we're actually talking about here. PPP loans, easy for me to say, was a program in 2020 during the coronavirus outbreak to help small businesses. It was issued by the federal government, overseen by the SBA, Small Business Association. PPP stands for Personal Payroll Protection Program, and they gave out. You ready for this number? I'm not kidding. $953 billion in loans to small businesses across the country. Jeff Wilson is sort of now the sort of poster boy, hobby wise, for receiving, I believe, between $1 and $2 million for his business, not sports card investor. He has a business that has nothing to do with cards. And then what the big thing is that many of these loans were forgiven, meaning the people that received them didn't have to pay them back. It was sort of like, all right, but to get loan forgiveness, Victor, Erica, everybody who's listening or watching this, to get loan forgiveness, you have to show where you spent the loan money given to you. So you can't go to, Bermuda, and on a vacation. So what you had to spend the money on was payroll programs. So obviously wages, insurance benefits, that sort of thing. You could also use the loan towards uh, rent and utilities. So your mortgage, you're paying your heat, your lights to keep the business and the doors open. As long as you showed that, um, in some cases they forgave the loan or lessened how much you had to pay back. There are cases of fraud. There are people that could not show or were proven to have spent those loan monies on things not what it was designed for, and now those folks face charges from the federal government for misuse of that loan. And I believe that's a felony. So we're not talking about some of the stuff I'm seeing with the content. Using Jeff sort of as the point man here. His loan was forgiven. That loan doesn't get forgiven if you can't show that you spent, the funds in the appropriate manner. So, people are trying to say, well, he bought cards or he funded SCI. I think the fact that his loan was forgiven sort of proves otherwise. But he's sort of a polarizing figure. People like to either go after him or support him. Nowhere sort of in between. This would be a story. So that you see the topic here, PP loans, hobby worthy story, nothing to see here. For me, it's more nothing to see here. I think it would be more of a story if he was like found fraudulent, because then we can say,
Right.
well, we can't trust him on anything. He's
Right.
stealing money from the government. So I've talked enough on this. Sorry for the long way. I just wanted to make people aware what a PP loan actually is before we start, diving into the subject. So I don't know who wants to go first, Victor, Erica, but kind of your thoughts on this being, and Jeff is not the only one. He's sort of the first guy you'll see
Right.
listed when people talk about this. But whoever wants to go and add their take.
I'll go. Well,
Yeah.
I am, I guess, I've had a chance to really think about this because it's been the topic like all week. There's, the videos that have been released have been like throughout the week. And then you have a lot of secondary commentary by other content creators, which made for a really interesting week of content for me, especially. I am down with PPP, and I'll explain why. I put myself back in 2020, and what we had in this country was a lot of uncertainty. And the uncertainty came obviously through the pandemic, but the game plan to get past this uncertainty and to bring security and stability to the nation was to protect small businesses, and small businesses became the focus. I think it was a good move. I think it kept a lot of businesses open, and of course, you're going to have some that didn't play by the rules or decided to close shop. If you wanted to get out of business, that would have been the perfect time for you to get out of business, was during the pandemic. But if you wanted to keep your doors open, there was government assistance available to help you keep the doors open. But I can tell you, working for the railroad in the positions that I've had over the years, I've been on teams where we have to get government funding. And I know there was a big movement several years ago where the Clean Air Act and the EPA wanted clean running equipment used by the railroads. And I was a part of that team to get government funding. And I know from experience the layers upon layers upon layers of accountability, the proof and everything that goes along with it. It was a daunting task to get this government funding. And so any little thing that went wrong, you were disqualified. So you really have to stay on top of it. You really have to go through each phase and each step of the process in order to secure funding. It is no easy task to get government funding. But the bottom line, as I reflected on all the evidence that was presented this week, I saw good tabloids, right? It was interesting. It piqued my curiosity. But at the end of the day, I didn't see anything really illegal in what was done. I know there was multiple companies that had taken loans. I even heard Tom Brady, one of his companies, applied for PPP loans. So overall, I don't really see anything really to grasp that this is illegal. This is fraudulent. So in that aspect, not guilty. And so, but I will say the but, and we all got big butts, right? And the big but in this situation, to me anyways, is the optics. The optics of this look really bad. And here's why. I remember back when we were in COVID, I do remember watching Jeff Wilson's content. And I do watch his content because I find it extremely well produced. If anything else, entertaining. But I do remember that season where he was like flying all over the world, all of these vacation spots and buying these huge cards. And my thought in the back of my mind was, wow, how does somebody afford to do all of that in the middle of a pandemic with all this uncertainty and just the way it was spun, or whether it was true or not true, or just kind of like a tabloid thing, the optics of it and the timing of it does not look good at all. But with that said, again, I don't see anything really illegal in what happened.
Erica, yeah, well said, Victor. I want to comment on a comment from John Mangini in the chat room. You know, Biden has come out and said there is fraud involving this program. They're going to, go after those people that committed it. So, kind of, piggybacking off what you said, until we hear, that someone from the hobby is guilty of that, or even alleged, you know what I mean. You're supposed to be innocent until proven guilty. Until I hear that specifically, we have to go on the good faith that people did the right things with the money. I agree with you 100% on the optics of it. People who don't get those loans are going to just naturally, right? Human nature is to be a little jealous of that. I don't think, I just think that's been that way for a long time. But Erica, kind of your take on this situation.
Yes, I'm leaning towards it's hobby worthy story. Like I agree with both of you guys and your points of view on it. The optics of it. Also too, it's people, him in particular, people already had their own opinions about him and what he does and doesn't do. So this was just like the cherry on top to really just talk and explain how people feel and so I get it. um it it's I get the business aspect of it. I get the program. I get the legal, what's legal, what's not. But for him being the face of the hobby, it just doesn't look good. And it's just like a lot of why and how, and especially during that was one of the few businesses that was supposedly doing really well during the pandemic. So it just doesn't make much sense. Even like it doesn't make much sense optically from people in the hobby looking at him. If I'm making any sense. Um, I just think I don't know. It's a tough one, especially because he's one of the faces of the hobby towards the world. So I just
Yeah,
I really hope that he he comes out and and speaks on his own behalf, just very transparent and honest, and keep it 100. I hope that he does that. But I don't know.
yeah, and he's released the video, and he's not ducked any kind of ducked the topic. I don't want to say accusation because I don't think there's really an accusation here, but he hasn't ducked the subject or the topic. A couple comments I want to highlight here. Baseball Hall of Fame autographs. I've handled nearly 100 PPP loans for various companies. No one was saying no to free money. That's the other thing, right? If you're
Yeah.
given, very few people will turn down free money or a loan, especially if you're running a business. And when the pandemic first broke, right? If you go back, it seems like a longer time ago than it was. It's only 2020. I think most of us, I'll count myself in this, thought this was not going to last as long as it did. We kind of say, oh, the U.S., we've got better medical facilities, we've got more financial assets to tackle this. This, maybe 6 months, 3 months, and we'll get on the other side of the hill. And obviously, that wasn't the case. And so, when you're a business owner, that's a scary time. Uncertainty is one of the worst things when you own a business. You have families. You worry. A good business owner is worried about his employees and their families as well. So, it's. I don't fault anyone for taking the loan. And it was the government who decided, hey, you don't have to pay it back. It wasn't necessary, but you also had to show where that money was spent to get the loan forgiven. So those who had the loan forgiven most likely are not going to be brought up on fraud charges unless something comes to light after the fact or someone else turns in evidence that says otherwise. So we do have a guest calling in. I want to bring him on. And it's Frank, Baseball Hall of Fame autographs, who just said, like, he's on the front lines of this. So welcome, Frank.
Thank you. I'm in my car and I've never called into the show, but I enjoy talking about this. Just a couple things to remember. I was watching the Jeff Wilson video. His sports card investment was founded in 2019. So they wouldn't even qualify for a PPP loan. So when he always says that, they didn't take one out, of course he didn't take one out. He wasn't allowed to. The second thing that really bothered me with that was the fact that, like I said, everyone was taking out loans right then. Whether or not he really needed the money or not. I literally handled hundreds of PPP loans for clients, and everyone was taking them. No one's saying no to free money. Now, whether or not he needed the money or not, it doesn't matter. People are just going to take it. You would take it. I would take it. Hell. So a lot of people, they didn't realize at the time, though, that the information was going to become public. They thought it was going to stay under wraps. And when it first came out, you got to remember the Tom TB12 company, the Outback Steakhouse, a lot of very public companies, when soon as this came out as public, they returned the money right away because it was a bad PR thing for them. So I don't think Jeff Wilson ever thought the fact that this would come out publicly, but it has. So he's got to deal with the optics of it. And there's no question the final thing is, assuming his company made more than $2 million, I don't know if they're not public information, that money eventually trickled all down to the owners. And how he spent it is up to him. There's nothing illegal in there. There's nothing immoral, maybe, but illegal. No, it was all legal what he did. There's no question about it. There's no fraud. Unless he created ghost employees.
Yeah, and thank you, Frank, for sharing the insight. The other thing you touched on, a great point you started right off with it, is like SCI, his hobby company, would not qualify for this.
Correct.
And people forget he had other businesses before he even started SCI. He's sort of late to the hobby, and I don't mean that in a derogatory, but people don't realize, he collected when he was younger and all that, but with his company is fairly new. So the money that he got was, and then, the name of the business escapes me, but he has a business that has nothing to do with cards, packs, boxes. It's not a hobby entity, and that's where the PP loan was given to. Like Frank just said, what exactly, only the person who gets the loan truly knows. But again, to get the loan, do you agree with this, Frank? Am I correct in saying for the loan to be forgiven, you have to show where that was spent?
The money had to go. So basically, the loans were capped per person to $100,000 annual, and they got 2.5 months worth of salary. So it's almost doing the math in my head, almost $25,000 a person a head. And theoretically, you were supposed to use that money for salaries, but the government was aware that people quit. You know what I'm saying? If someone quit, it's not the company's fault. So the amount of money you got was based on salaries, but you could use the money to offset it. So let's say you got $100,000. In the following 2.5 months, you had to have $100,000 worth of salaries that you used it for. But if someone quit, you didn't have that. They allowed that to use towards utilities, to mortgage or rent payments. It's like no one I know that got the PPP loan was not able to get 100% forgiven. So if that makes any sense. It was very easy to give it forgiven. And the government was so overburdened at the time, and the banks, most people, they forgive it automatically without any. He talks about turning in a mountain of paperwork. I find that very hard to believe unless he was audited. And if he was audited, he could just release his audit statement and then this whole thing would go away for better or worse.
So Frank, I think what I hear you saying, and I kind of line up with it, is a worthy tabloid perhaps, but really nothing to see here legally.
There's nothing to see here legally, unless he created, literally what some people were doing was they were creating fake employees, or they were giving their employees, let's say you could take up to $100,000. So I had an employee making $50,000. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to give him a raise to $100,000 for 2 months, and then I'm going to bump him back down to 50. That kind of stuff is illegal, and I don't think anything like that happened. I really don't think so.
Yeah. No, thanks for calling in with that information. I do agree, and I see your point. I think from the hobbies perspective, it's not about the program or the loan itself. I think it's more about him, and that what people, are gravitating towards, that I think that's what it is.
They're grasping at straw. There's no question in my mind. I don't know the ownership structure. I think it was like 5 or whatever the company is, but assuming he's the sole owner of that company, and as long as that company made more than $2 million for the year, he said they went down significantly, but let's say they went from 10 million to 5 million. I don't know. No one knows. Assuming they're still making money, eventually all that PPP loan probably trickled down to the owner's pockets legally. I want to make that very clear, legally.
Okay.
So does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay. Any other questions before I drop off?
No, hey, listen, thank you for you're on the front lines of this particular subject, and I appreciate you.
There's so many more loans that were out there that are not public information that people were getting. I guarantee you this was not the only grant that he got.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate the insight and clarifying some things.
Yeah. So that's just the final thing is I don't think any fraud was involved. So just bad optics. So okay, thanks. Enjoy the show. Bye.
All right, thanks, Frank. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Didn't know Frank was I had an inside beat on that, and obviously didn't know he was going to call him, but thankfully he did.
I knew he was an accountant, but I didn't know that he dealt specifically with PPP, and that's the dynamic that I love about this show. Right, we have somebody on the front line who can just jump in and give us a quick note. I love that.
Yeah, I strongly believe that a lot of people in the hobby just really want the honesty from people on the front lines, like the faces of the hobby. They want honesty. They want, goodwill. They don't want to be, 52 faked out. People are tired of that. I think people are just fed up. And I think a lot of that fed upness just leads to this topic and talk. But the real problem is that the lack of authentic content creators or content leaders in the hobby space.
Good point.
Yeah, and again, it goes back to kind of what I said. If there was something illegal done and it was proven that he did it, obviously, even if it wasn't done in the card space, it's just an indictment on the person, right? That is in the card space, and I think that's where the hobby is curious, interested, trying to kind of keep tabs on it. But again, like Frank just said, right? Until you hear someone being charged with something, everything's above board. You can't just make accusations without charges, right? I mean, you can, but there's you got to have the proof and the pudding.
I think though the watchdog mentality. I think we do need an element of that. I do think that the people who put themselves on the front on the front line, I guess, and are labeled as hobby leaders, right? They have to understand as well that the hobby demands a very high level of accountability and transparency and authenticity. In other words, integrity, right? And the integrity has to be above reproach, and to put everyone on notice that this is a hobby that has a lot of passion behind it. And when it comes to shenanigans and not being authentic, the hobby's going to be all over that. And so it should be every content creator, especially those on the front line labeled as leaders. It's time to take stock and be straight up and be honest with our content.
I agree with you, Victor. But here's a great comment as you were talking, posted by Dylan here, and he said, "Watchdog is different than full-blown attack of a person, right? Yeah. Like caring about the hobby, wanting everyone to, be done right or not be taken advantage of, or scammed, or dishonesty tactics. I agree with you, Victor. But there's also that fine line sometimes, right?
Sure.
When it becomes just, hey, I don't like this guy, so I'm just going to do a smear campaign and just throw a bunch of stuff, spaghetti at the wall and see what can stick and make this guy look bad. So
But
I think
I
there's a difference.
I had the opportunity to listen to a great podcast by a friend of ours, Mike Summers, and
Yeah.
he went ahead and did a 2-part series interviewing the guys over at Sports Card Radio, and I thought it was a fantastic podcast. If you did not check that podcast out, you need to go check out Wax Pack's Hero and check out those 2 episodes. But it really, many of us have been following Sports Card Radio for many years. I know I have, and the way Mike Summers presented it in the interview, it's more like they're more like a wrestling, they're the heel in the wrestling world. Like wrestling always has like a good guy and a bad guy, right? And so the heel always upsets the good guys, and there's this bickering that goes back and forth, and all it is, it's part of the play of generating interest. And whether we like the attack or not attack on the moral standpoint, I don't agree with it either. But at the end of the day, it's what generates interest. It has everybody talking about it. Views are through the roof. Secondary content is being created by everyone else. And
Well, look,
so,
we're talking about it on this show
right now. Right.
So I get it. I think though, you compared it to like they're the heels and they're wrestling, but if I want wrestling, I'll watch wrestling, right?
Yeah.
So like I think we need more. Again, it's a fine line, right? From informative to, besmirching someone, attacking someone's character, when what you're attacking them on may not actually be factually
Right. I hear you.
correct.
No, I hear you.
I mean, that's why we have libel, slander, and defamation lawsuits, and
Right.
that way. I don't want to go down that road. That's a whole nother,
Yeah.
But I know this: if I was accused of something that's not true, and I can prove it, which I should be able to, you seriously have to think about how you would defend yourself legally. And if that's a countersuit, then that's a countersuit. I'm not a litigation guy that just sues at the drop of a dime. But when you saying something, hey, you're doing this and you're doing that, and it's not true, there's got to be repercussion. It's just real easy to turn on a camera, turn on a microphone, and say something about somebody. It's too easy. And we, if it's true or there's proof, fine. But if you're just, hey, you're just in the mood that day, or you're looking to, bump up your ratings and your clicks and your downloads, and because you want to bump up your bank account, that's not the right reason. And that may be, I can't answer for everybody, but there's people who do it for those reasons alone. Like if someone truly cares about the hobby, and to me, people who truly care about the hobby are also talking about a lot of the good things. We see some of the comments in the chat room. I just want to collect cards and talk about cards, right? If all your content is this guy sucks, this guy's a criminal, this guy's bad, it's kind of the boy who cried wolf type of deal. So, all right. Any final comments? I think we've really, kind of covered this subject. I'm sure it's not the end of it. It might be for this episode, but I'm sure more will come out on other content. Any final words on this particular topic? Or all right, let's get into our next topic, which not as well. I guess it depends who you talk to, right? We see collector to collector selling at shows. Now, this thing went viral. Let me pull it up here. This is a sign from a card show. Let me read it. It says only vendors that have paid for tables at today's show may sell items at today's show. Collectors may sell items to the vendors that have paid for tables at today's show, but may not sell items to other collectors inside this building. All right, this one hits close to home for me. Many don't know. This thing went viral without saying what show it was, but this was the Syracuse Mega Show. 256 tables at the Horticulture Building on the property of the New York State Fairgrounds, where they hold the New York State Fair. every year. The show was sort of a kind of a Comic-Con and sports card type show. Toys, games, Funkos, obviously sports cards. It was sort of just what they call it, the mega show. The Ghostbusters car was there. The TARDIS from the Doctor Who. There were stormtroopers walking around. Darth Vader, R2D2 was rolling around. Someone controlling it with a remote control. This is my home show. This is a show I've done for 20 years. I know the promoter very, very well. I will not mention his name. People can find out if they want. I have not talked to him since the show. He sent me an email thanking me for I did a thing with SGC and bulk subs. He thanked me in that email for setting that up and doing it. I will probably reach back out about maybe to talk about this with him. I will give you a little insight that you're not getting on all the posts you're seeing on Instagram or Twitter or wherever else. This sign probably came not from me, but a couple dealers who complained that collectors were selling to each other, maybe putting their Zion cases on a showcase, kind of blocking the table where other people can't get to the case. I think that I don't want to speak for the promoter. I know, even though I know him real well, but the sign to me is more of a scare tactic. A couple dealers complained. He said, I'll try to do something about it. He printed up the sign, put it on the door coming into the show. I have never heard of anybody being told to leave or escorted out. I'm not saying that that's never happened. It's not to my knowledge that it happened. I've done the show a long time and know a lot of people on this floor. I would probably know if it did, but I can't say that with 100% certainty. I wear two hats on this, right? I'm a dealer. I obviously just set up at this show, and I go to shows as a consumer. I get it from a dealer front, right? I've had this happen, right? Where I just politely will ask those two folks, hey, I don't have a problem with the sale itself, but can you just like go somewhere else? That way your case is not blocking, on the showcase or blocking a table for someone else who might a potential customer. And every time the few times I've asked someone politely to do that, they've done it. And where they went, I don't know. But it doesn't bother me. Obviously I didn't complain to the promoter. I just kind of handle it internally. Hey, can you take, your transaction somewhere else? I don't necessarily care about the transaction. I know other dealers, and I've commented on this on my show. Are they reporting that to the IRS? Any kind of sale? Probably not, but I don't know, right? Where the dealers pay sales tax. I get that aspect too. I'm just not. I get the etiquette involved, right? Do I wish it wouldn't happen? I mean, that's but the line was, Erica, Victor, the line's blurred because of trade nights, right? Trade nights happen on the same floors in a lot of cases, and you don't have to have a tax number to be at trade night and all that. So I think the line's so blurred. I'm more like I just said, I'm more apt to just ask someone that, hey, can you do that? Knock your deal out, but can you not block my table in the process? That's my stance. I'd never go to a promoter and be that up in arms about it. But people are attacking the promoter, and I don't think that's fair. He's trying to run a business, be fair to his dealers, and that's where the sign come from. Again, setting the baseline. Victor and Erica, I'm glad you're on the show because you've wore both of these hats as a setting up at a show and as a consumer at a show. Kind of whoever wants to go first. What do you think about this sign at the door of the show, and your take on it?
Okay. My take. I'm gonna use this analogy for as far as being behind a table setting up. I can't just walk into the mall with my bag of whatever sneakers and just start randomly selling them in front of Foot Locker, whatever store. You can't do that. And the promoter is basically the owner of that mall, just trying to, take care of the tenants, which is the business owners. So I 100% get that aspect. But like what you said, it was perfect. For the collectors coming in, it's so blurred because of how the trading between collectors is, that, you know, it's just kind of like a free for all. I can do it anywhere. If I see it, I can, you know. So I think that blurred line is the key component. But collectors have to be more respectful and really think things out thoroughly when they're in those situations. Because I see it all the time, and people will block traffic for the business owner trying to do a deal or something like that, or not go about it the right way. You know, I know people that go to card shows and just go for trading and dealing directly with collectors, and not even deal with the people who set up. So I understand that, but I give one more example. I was at the show. This is the first time I've done it ever, really. And a collector was trying to sell the dealer some cards. The dealer was like, "Oh, no, no." I was right there, like in the same three-way conversation, and I said, "Oh, I really like those, you know, those cards." Then, before I even engaged with the collector, I looked at the man who was set up, and I said, are you going to, you know, purchase them?" He was like, "No." I said, "Do you mind if I talk to him and maybe me possibly purchase them?" He was like, "No, I don't mind, and thank you so much for, you know, even asking that." And I said, "Oh, thank you." And I stepped aside, away from the table, away from traffic, it was anybody's, and I talked to the collector. I thought that was the most respectful way of going about that. But most people, you know, just do whatever they want, and you got to be more respectful in all parties for everyone.
Well, for me, I think, you know, and I was a card show dealer from like 1994 to 2004. And I can tell you that, at least in my sphere of influence, that wasn't going to work back then. I mean, them old head dealers,
Yeah.
they would have
Yeah.
let you. They would have
Hey,
let you have
I'm
it.
one of those guys.
Yeah,
I'm one
yeah,
of
you
those
are.
guys.
Yeah, but
But
as far as today's climate where we're at, we see
exactly.
people throwing it, like you said, throwing the cases on people's showcases and tables,
Right.
messing up their traffic flow. Like that
Right.
is the issue of not being respectful enough. Like I wouldn't do that. I have enough sense and respect to talk things out and go about it the best route, but people
Yeah.
aren't doing that. That's
Yeah.
the issue, you know.
But at the same time, you know, there's an atmosphere in the hobby now where it's very community based. It's very,
Yeah.
you know, trade night focused, and we want that kind of activity at card shows. So what we have to realize, especially, you know, the older guys, is that the hobby has evolved to trade
Mhm.
nights and coming to card shows to do specific deals and hopefully a trade or sell or whatever. So I think that there has to be a compromise here, between both sides, because both sides make solid points, right? But we got to understand that the hobby's evolving, and that there does need to be at least a medium level of etiquette when we're doing dealings at a card show, and just be mindful of the dealers and other things going on around you, and maybe go off to the side or go off to a lobby or go off to the parking lot, and just have a little bit of etiquette and respect both sides. I mean, I think that's a fair compromise for this issue, and I'm glad it came up, because it needed to go viral, and we need to get the word out that we need to have some manners when we go to a card show.
We can't hear you, John.
I want us to comment on this comment from Hobby Champs right here. I kind of agree with it. See if you guys do too. It said, could have just made a sign that said, "Please do not block dealers' tables, and please do all person-to-person transactions off the premises. Thank you." Right? It's polite. It's not
Mm-hmm.
outlawing it outright. But I also think that original sign comes from, he has to collect tax numbers from all the dealers at the show to make sure they're legitimately can set up. I like how Hobby Champs worded this. My only hesitation would be it's sort of promoting like non-sales tax sales, and I don't, if someone from New York State sales tax comes in and sees the sign, they could go to him and say, "Hey, you're promoting like non-taxable sales on the floor of
Yeah.
your show." So I know we're nitpicking like wording here, but that's, in a way that's important too. I like this. I think I would probably be, as a promoter, and I have promoted about 5 shows in my lifetime. Not a lot. I don't you know uh, claim to be a show promoter, but I have promoted about 5 shows. I would have probably worded it more like this. Maybe do all deals. Maybe not transactions. We're maybe just saying deals. Transactions usually indicates currency. Um, but again, we're nitpicking. We're nitpicking words. What do you think about the wording here, based on Hobby Champs? You know,
Yeah, the wording and the approach is it could have been done differently, right? But here's the thing that I'd like to add to all of this, John, and I wish I'd remember where I heard this piece of content from so I can give them proper credit, but it slips my mind. But I've heard a content creator say this: take that sign and try to enforce it. It's going to be a nightmare to try to enforce something like that. I think what's happening is a perfect opportunity for show promoters to serve their customers and make arrangements for them to do that type of activity, and make it a part of your package, and not try to shun it. If we try to shun it, we see what's happening. It's going to backfire tremendously.
Erica, what did you think about just the wording? Of what Hobby Champ said. Like it could have been
Um,
worded better.
well, I agree with him, and I do like the way he put it, for sure. Um, this, uh, yeah, the topic is just very interesting to me because it's
Uh-oh.
Oh, we lost her. Well,
oh,
here.
I'm back.
Oh,
There she
Yes.
is.
all right, she's
Oh,
back.
sorry about that. People, the biggest thing is like people have to remember respect. Number one, use your common sense too, and number three, people who set up at these events and tables and stuff. It's a lot of hard work and a lot of money and a lot of things to go involved with everything. So, being respectful about how you handle yourself is just very important, and people have to do better when it comes to that.
Another great comment, I think, from Hobby Champs. As a show promoter, you just have to have tact and grace about the rules. Shows are about foot traffic, not the dealers. I'll disagree with the last part. I think a show promoter has a responsibility to both parties, both factions, right? The dealers, that's who's paying the bills and paying all his expenses and then some. And obviously, you don't have a show without consumers coming through the door to buy from the dealer. So you've got to it's that scales, right? You got to be fair to all involved. So when I see not the dealers as a dealer, I'm like, hey, what's that about? But I think you got to try to be balance it out, as and just be fair to both parties. I think the
Mhm.
way you word something can make all the difference in the world, right? Sometimes wording just leaves a bad taste in the mouth, or can be, hey, I get that. That makes sense. I'll keep that in mind, right? How something's presented. Bo says I didn't see these signs in 2021. That's when someone says to me, well, that's not how we used to do it, right? I don't like that line. That doesn't fly with me. We didn't used to do it. Well, things evolve, right? And we talked
Mhm.
about trade nights in stores, right? Where a store owner will, after closing, will let everyone bring in all their inventory and trade, sell, and whatnot. It's blurred the lines. I get it. I'm not mad at collectors for bringing I bought out of those cases from people. Like it's been a great opportunity to purchase cards. If two people, see each other and they saw a card in that case that they're interested, like Victor said, find a quiet corner. You mentioned even going off premises. Now I will say in Syracuse, in our case in Syracuse, it's 32 degrees outside. So not many people want to go outside and complete a deal. But could you go in the car? Someone get in the passenger seat. Someone can get in the driver's seat. Fire up the heat. Not kind of odd, but it could go down that way, right? But yeah, just do it out of respect to the dealer. I think it's got to be a mutual respect from a dealer and the collectors, right? We need to both coexist, or one doesn't really necessarily exist without the other. Some of it stems from I've had people put their cases on my showcases. It's never happened to me, but last year a dealer friend of mine, I didn't see it. He told me about it. Was at a show that I was not at. Someone put their Zion case on his glass showcase, and his case broke. The glass shattered. And I asked him, well, what did the collector do? He said sorry, and he picked up his case and walked away.
Terrible.
So imagine that. Now look, an Allstate case costs $110, and that's new, right? This was not a new case, but the collector, not on purpose, but the process of placing that case with cards in it, right, was enough weight to break the showcase. He apologized and then walked away. No offer of, hey, how do we resolve this? I feel terrible, right?
He said,
and
my bad.
He said my bad and walked away, right? So, like, if it was me, I would expect that person to make, pay for the case. Now, I'm not going to ask $110. That's for a new case. But at least pay for the glass to be replaced. Maybe that's probably close to that anyway. But at least be a little more like, hey, how do we? I obviously didn't do that on purpose. I feel terrible. What do we do here? Type of deal, right?
Exactly.
Insurance. I have insurance, but there's a $200 deductible, right? So that's going to be under. That's going to be an out of pocket cost in that case. So. Those are the kind of instances where I think some of this also comes from. We got another caller.
I gotta go before.
And Erica's got an appointment, so we're gonna bid her farewell. Thank you, Erica.
Thank you.
All right, welcome, Bink Nation. You hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, we lost them. I mean, again, Victor, again, that's never happened to me. I've had people put their cases on my showcases without damage. I've just always politely asked them to, hey, can you not do that, or take, and I do it in a polite way. I've never had anyone get snippy or rude back. They said, okay, yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Yeah. And I think, the older collectors and the younger collectors, I think we, at least this is my point of view. I want to be mindful of, and I don't want to cause this wedge or this divisiveness with old collector versus new collector. I'm older, but I like to collect stuff that's modern, ultra modern. I still want to be relevant in the hobby, so I still keep up with opening a pack or a box here and there. I don't want to lose that allure of an excitement of the hobby. So I think being mindful of age gaps and being sensitive to that, and having a mutual respect for the older and the younger collectors.
Yeah, no doubt. Bo just I put it on the screen, but I was not aware of this. I'm not in Arkansas, but dealers in Arkansas have to report their show sales to the show promoter and pay sales tax directly to the promoter, who then submits that payment to the state. That is different.
Wow.
But that is, I've never, that's something else. And but it is Arkansas, with all due respect to anyone that lives there. So yeah, that's crazy. New York's a crazy state too. I'm surprised they haven't tried that. Rex Gocher may not agree with the language, but I do agree with the show promoter for several reasons. Herman, common sense and respect is something that is lost on most of today's society. Hit that like button. Logan says, yeah, please do like and subscribe. Great topics today, and a lot of that chat room is fired up. Rex, who owns the sports card shop in New Buffalo, Michigan, so he's a sales tax collector and payer. He says sellers who aren't doing business legitimately create an unlevel playing field for those who do. Get a table, collect and remit the required taxes, and this won't be an issue. I agree with him. That's a great point. And I'll say this, I've talked about doing this particular show for 20 years. Some of the folks I set up with at this show were customers at one point who then got their tax number, like Rex just said, and then became compadres as dealers. So getting
Yeah.
a tax number is not a big deal.
I can agree with Rex to a certain extent, but then there's that but, right? That we all got big butts type of thing. But
I cannot lie. You
yeah,
forgot that part.
the hobby movement is an atmosphere of community and trading, and that creates fun and buzz within the hobby. So we got to create an avenue for that type of activity, and they are, for the most part, they are. The bigger shows and that sort of thing, they are creating trade nights and that sort of thing for that kind of activity. And so we've got to compromise, and to say one way or the other, man, that's touchy.
Yeah, another comment here from Bo. That's not what I meant. Dealers weren't complaining about side deals because of the boom. Now that sales are down, we need a scapegoat. I love you, Bo, but I think you're getting inside the dealer's head and kind of speaking for them to what they're complaining about. Maybe they are. You might be right. Maybe they are complaining because their bank account's a little lower. But we can't paint every dealer with a broad brush. I'm going to tell you, I didn't complain, but do I like when a deal's happening in front of it? Like Victor said, Victor agrees too. Like we don't want that. You're blocking a potential sale from someone else. The shows I do are 6 hours long. It's a short window of time, and it's just a respect thing, right? Too. I think is are dealers grumpy because maybe they're making less money? Yeah, but if they want to be mad, if they're mad at that, be mad at your inventory, right? Maybe look at your pricing structure and see what you can do better on your pricing to generate more sales. I don't know how many are complaining because their panties are in a bunch about lower sales. I'm sure some, sure. Just like you can't paint a broad brush that they're not all doing that. You can't paint a broad brush that they
And
are.
I think it's a really small. I mean, I go to card shows pretty frequently, and I don't. As a matter of fact, I'm getting ready to go to one right after the show today. But I don't see a lot of collector to collector selling. I mean, it's not rampant. I don't think. I mean, not at least maybe I haven't noticed, but I don't see a lot of it.
Yeah, because I didn't notice it for like a day or two after it went viral, and someone texted me, "Isn't this your show that you do all the time?" I'm like, "Yeah, it is." And then I obviously my ears perked up, and I read a lot of the comments and people's take. Again, as a show promoter, I think your responsibilities to your dealers, who are your lifeline, right? If you have 100-table show and you only sell 50 tables, you're going to be in trouble as a promoter, most likely. It's a bad look too when you advertise 100-table and you don't have it's sold out. And your responsibilities to collectors who are coming to your show, that you have enough dealers, right? Ryan Nolan talked about going to a show. There was 3 tables there. As crazy as that might sound, right? You go to a show, you want as much selection as you can get. So it's a two-way street. The promoter needs to be fair to the collectors and the dealers both. Sometimes it's tough, right? It's to win that whole room. I will say this: the wording can be better. I don't want to sound like I'm the promoter's lawyer. I do know him for a long time. He is a very nice guy, and I've never heard an instance where he's had to ask somebody to leave. I'm not saying it hasn't happened, and if it has, actually I take that back. I have heard him get involved where there was a theft on the floor, but police were also involved, and then the police took it from there. But other than that, I've never heard the promoter asking someone to leave the premises or not come on the premises. Frankly, I think the sign was more to appease a dealer or two that complained and that sort of thing. All right, we got Bink Nation called back in. Let's see. Let's bring him on. Morning.
How you guys doing? Another guy with a big old butt here calling in.
Well, welcome. Thank you for calling in. Go ahead.
So I don't know. A couple of thoughts on it. I'm not a dealer at all. I'm just a guy who loves to go to card shows, collect, and stuff like that. So keeping that in mind, you've got two different theories of thought, right? You've got the collector, you've got the dealer. In my mind, a deal a lot of times can create another deal, right? Whether it's with a collector or a dealer. And I get the whole, don't grab your big old plastic case and come up and slam it on my table. I don't think anybody should do that. Like, find a place to do it. But what about creating areas at these shows, like a collector's corner or something like that, where collectors can go and do their deals to the side and then come back and continue with their day? Because like I said, they do this side deal and now they walk around. And now a dealer might want something that they just made a deal for that wouldn't have come up if that deal wouldn't have taken place.
Yep. Good
Yeah,
point.
yeah. No, it's etiquette, right? I think it boils down to etiquette, right? I just put up a comment from Kevin. He feels bad if he puts a fingerprint on someone's glass showcase, right? Now that's extreme, but I just think it goes to show you Kevin's kindness and how he cares about what he does and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It's just etiquette. I don't want. I'm not. Listen, if two collectors make a sale, I'm not having a hissy fit or throwing a temper tantrum about that. You can't oversee everything. It's just like you said, having the etiquette. Do it not in front of someone's table. Beware. I've never, I've only brought like small showcases to any show that I wasn't set up at. But even then, I've never set it down. Knowing how, as a dealer myself, I've never put it on someone's showcase, right? If I find a spot on the table where there's not even a card or not a product on there, right? And I think it's just, I know it sounds like common sense, but maybe that's cause it is. And on the other side of the coin, someone does that. They may not be doing it maliciously. The etiquette may not just be there. So I just think, yeah, go ahead, Victor.
I love the point that he made, because all right, let's say I go to the collector's corner and I make a deal, right? And I'm sold $500 worth of cards out of my case. It's more than likely that I'm going to take that $500 that I just made and I'm going to spend it at the show somewhere. So in the grand scheme of the ecosystem, right? It's all going to work out at the end.
Yeah, I agree. It's a great point. It's a great point by Big Nation, right? And the other thing, it goes. I hate to keep harping on wording, right? As a show promoter, right, you got to report everyone who sets up at the show here in New York State. I can only speak to New York State. I don't know what heck in Arkansas the show promoters collecting all the sales tax. I don't who's escorting them out of that building at the end of that day, right? But you've got to watch the wording, because New York State, who's, by the way, New York State's the number one. I think California, New York, one or two heaviest tax state. They want their money. So if he words it like, hey, great, do all the transactions you want without a tax number, New York State, if word got back to them, they'll say, what are you doing there? Like, we're going to pull your license to promote shows, which you have to have in New York State. So there's just so many gears involved here. I will, at the end of the thing, you want to try to word stuff and without sort of taking anyone aback or upsetting everybody. It's hard. Here's a great comment from Dan Ryan, who's, I know personally. He says, saddest thing about this all is that it was an awesome show overall. The only thing people took from it outside of Syracuse was the flyer. I had a blast. It was a great show, but now this is sort of what it's being talked about. But what are you going to do, right? It is what it is. You just hope etiquette, common courtesy wins most of the days. Unfortunately, that's not always the case. Hence, we're talking about it. So, but I'm sure it'll come up again. So
I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you letting me come on here and say my 2 cents for whatever it's worth. But keep doing what you're doing, and I got to bail, but take care, guys.
All right, thanks, Big Nation. Hey, 2 callers today. Everyone's welcome to call in anytime we do this. We're about up against the hour. Real quick, I'm not even going to put the banner up. Best move in the offseason in baseball free agency, Victor, in your opinion?
Man, I'm excited. Number one, I thought that we were going to make this a topic, but it seems like
Oh well, all right. I put the banner up. I saw the sad eyes, so
no.
I
Number
can't.
one, I was really I noticed more than previous years, but there was a lot of activity during this winter meetings per se, right? And there was a lot of big moves made really quick. It seems like a lot of these teams are striking while the iron's hot and picking up these free agents. I'm just really impressed, mostly with the Philadelphia Phillies adding Trey Turner. What an intricate piece to that lineup that's going to be. So I'm really excited to see how that one plays out. And the San Diego Padres picking up Xander Bogaerts and putting him in the middle of Fernando Tatis, Juan Soto, Manny Machado. My goodness. I cannot wait till next season already. But those are the two that really stand out to me. The Aaron Judge thing, to me, was not a really big signing. I think it did not move the needle at all as far as making the Yankees better for next season, or it's just really, it's a good team morale boost, right? Keeping the nucleus together. I think it's good for team morale. But as far as actually making an improvement to the team, I'm not impressed. And so we'll see what happens with the Yankees.
Yeah, I love listen, I'm a Mets fan. The Trey Turner signing hurt me in my heart as a Mets fan. The Phillies are obviously a big time rival. He's one of the best players in the league, and some people don't even realize that.
Yeah.
Look at the numbers. When he's done, he's going to be barring injury or anything gets sidetracked, he's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer, and people are going to be surprised at the numbers when all is said and done. The Mets don't really have a hole to fill with him, but there was a part of me wishful thinking that they would Steve Cohen would get him. We lost DeGrom, got Verlander. I'll disagree, and I'm not a Yankee fan. I just admitted, I just said I was a Mets fan. The Yankees had to sign Aaron Judge. I know that's not a new player. He was one that was already with the ball club. But imagine that team without Aaron Judge, what a big part of that team he was. And there are no outfielders left, unless you really love Jackie Bradley Jr. I don't know many that do. How bad is the outfield market? My own team, the Mets, signed Brandon Nimmo to an 8-year, $162 million deal. I like Brandon Nimmo. He's not worth 21 or whatever, 20 plus $million a year. But because the market, so kudos to Brandon's agent, who waited for everyone else to sign and left him right there because it bumped up what he got from the Mets. So I think the Aaron Judge, even though it's not a new player coming in, that team, we could say they need some more pitching to go further in the playoffs. But if they would have lost Aaron Judge and signed Brandon Nimmo or Jackie Bradley Jr., or they probably would have had to make a trade for a better quality player. But if they didn't, they possibly, especially in that division with Toronto getting better, Boston trying to get better, they may be on the outside looking in. So I think that's the biggest one. Trey Turner, I agree. People didn't pay as much attention to that, but I think that's a huge move. Like you mentioned, the Padres with Bogaerts. I mean, Verlander, the Mets had to do that.
Mets made some noise too. They sure did.
Yeah. So David Robertson, 1-year deal. You got him cheap. It's crazy to say 1 year at $10 million is cheap, but the way the market is, that's actually and yeah. Don't say this too loud, Rick, because I still buy him to this day. Trey Turner, one of the best players. I don't want to say most, but some people don't even realize it, right? So great bargain opportunity to buy some of his stuff. But it's going to be fun. Victor, you mentioned you're looking forward to the baseball season. Obviously, as a Mets fan, they have now the highest payroll. They're going to be paying the luxury tax. And Steve Cohen has the money, but it's going to be fun. We're gonna wrap it up. We are I think 13 days, 14 days, 15 days from the day of Christmas. So you have 14 shopping days left to wrap up any of your Christmas shopping. I am not done. The older I get, the worse I get at this every year. But just a reminder to everybody else, you got 14 days left to get it done. I'm
Need to
also
get on it.
yeah, I'm also talking to myself. I think I'm more talking to myself than anybody else. So with that, for Victor, we'll see you Tuesday on Hobby Hotline YouTube, and we'll be back here next Saturday. And if I don't see you before Christmas, happy holidays to you and
Yes.
yours.
Merry
We'll
Christmas,
see ya.
everybody.
Yeah, we'll see you soon.